to have everybody's attention. Thank you for joining us today to learn a little bit about raw data and early access and what we did to accomplish the great things that we have. Before we get started though, I would like to remind everybody, please turn down your cell phones, put them on vibrate, just so that we don't get interrupted. And also, I would be remiss if I did not remind everybody to fill out their electronic review forms. It's very important to GDC, and it also really helps us in our presentations so that we can do better again and again. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Mike McTyre, our Director of Design for Survios.
Hi.
Yay. And my name is Chris Hewish. I'm head of studio, lucky enough to work with this talented gentleman, as well as a few talented people in the front second row here. We have Nathan Berber and Alex Silken, founders of Survios. Yay. And then also Terrence, Roger, and Megan, who are part of the team, really helping us out, as well as John. So you can corner them later for questions if you can't find us. You're welcome. So I would like to get started. First things first, for those of you who may not have seen a whole lot of raw data or would like a refresher, I'd like to kick off with a little trailer that our marketing team has put together. It's a fantastic new trailer to give a little insight into what the game is and where it's going.
Stop. Do you even know why you're really here? You call yourselves a resistance. But what are you resisting? Advancement. Evolution. Immortality. You think you're free. But you're not. You are simply a weapon.
Catastrophic data breach detected. Initiating facility meltdown.
Yeah, all right.
All right.
So for those of you who are watching, you may have noticed the co-op online piece that was tagged in there. So we are very happy to announce that we have co-op cross-platform play with Oculus Store and Steam users. Come by our booth to check it out. We can talk more about that later. But just to jump right into it, why are we here today? We're here to share some insights into raw data. I'd like to start off by pointing out that this was the first VR game to generate over $1 million of revenue in its first 30 days, an amazing accomplishment and great validation that there is revenue to be made in the VR market with the right content.
What was the next slide?
Top charts.
Yes. So this is another big part of that too. Is we weren't exactly sure how raw data was going to perform right away, right? The team had its aspirations and was working, incredibly hard on the product, and we were just so excited that we were able to be the #1 title to top the Steam charts when we released the early access of raw data. So that was a huge accomplishment for the entire team working on the product.
Yeah, and a great accomplishment for the industry. So we're here to tell you a little bit about how we got there. But I'll start off with a little bit of the evolution of what led up to raw data. In 2013, Survios was founded, and it was founded to further research on immersion and new forms of VR gaming. The founders, Nate and Alex and James, I think James is here too somewhere.
Somewhere
there he is, James. So the founders got together at USC and really learned a lot and pioneered a lot about VR, and they wanted to bring that into the commercial space. And part of that was they wanted players to really feel the rush of battle, the awe of exploration, the exhilaration of imagining the future, and doing all of this in a highly immersive way. So hopefully our insights and anecdotes today can really provide some learnings that will help you on your path to VR greatness. This clicker seems to need a double click. So Mike, if you talk about...
Yeah, so to talk about some of the early developments the studio made, one of the first projects or prototypes they had led up to creating raw data was actually a product called Bullet Time Apex. I wouldn't necessarily expect everybody to know what that is, and this is actually before my time with the team, but this really was a pretty amazing time for the studio itself. They were really exploring a lot of the boundaries, the early boundaries, right? The hardware is not out at this point. People don't have it, right? So figuring out what can they do with it, how do you handle just the basic things from interacting with objects to using weapons within the world, dealing with enemies within an environment that you actually travel through. And there were so many important VR lessons learned from that fed directly into the design of raw data.
So that was a really important project for the team internally because it laid the foundation with the core mechanics, as Mike said, of what led to raw data. And it really highlights one of the things that Survios holds true to its development, which is, especially for VR, is to focus on the core mechanics first, get something that feels really, really good for VR before you start to expand beyond that with your game. And that, it's something that in other forms of game development is kind of taken for granted because the mechanics are fairly well established and you can kind of just brute force everything at once to a degree. But in VR, there's so many new areas to design and explore, so many new technologies that you have to create, that taking the time to really focus on that core mechanic before you start to put a metagame around it is particularly important, and it served us very, very well.
So then some of the lessons in particular that the team learned from these early prototypes like we were just talking about. One of those big lessons is the difference between realism versus usability, right? So a lot of people, in particular in the early days, and even now, still in VR, one of their major focuses is I want to recreate real life verbatim, exactly in VR. And sometimes that works well, and a lot of times it doesn't. Because at the end of the day, at least what we're trying to do is make great game experiences, right? So one great example here that we have up on the screen is, again, going back to Bullet Time Apex, the team initially made a shotgun amongst many of the other weapons that they made. And they had stock on the shotgun and on the other weapons and such, trying to create that impression of reality. But actually, once we got that into the game and players were actually holding the weapons in their hands, they're realizing because you don't have anything physically pushing against you, this is actually causing a problem. This actually wasn't helping gameplay, it was hindering it. Because already, just having to hold a weapon with two hands, there's already a slight disconnect there, especially with a two-handed weapon like a shotgun. To adding the third element of something that you're supposed to brace against yourself, it just didn't work out. And you can see how that evolved in our raw data picture of Boss, that he no longer has a stock on the shotgun. Specifically, we redesigned the weapon. We really enjoyed the weapon, but we took that off of it to make it more friendly to gameplay, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to create, is amazing gameplay experiences.
And you'll notice with all of the weapons in raw data, they are a little bit larger than life. And again, this goes to the usability factor. We really wanted it to feel good, to be just really slick to use, and to really get into using the weapon and not have to fumble with the realities of using a weapon. So this was one of the early key learnings that really influenced the rest of our development.
So then probably the next biggest pillar that, as a studio in particular on raw data, the team really focused on was the concept of active VR. And we were constantly asking ourselves, what is active VR? What are we trying to do here? What are we trying to accomplish? And with our products, our experiences, we really don't want to just sell immersion. Immersion's great, but we also want to sell that active experience, because we find, for the most part, there's a lot of great VR other products out there, fantastic stuff, but we find the VR products that get you to move your body, to get you to move around, whether you're using two guns pointing in different directions, whether you're having to dodge enemies trying to hit you, whether you're having to physically interact with objects. The more we can get the player to move into VR, the more physically active we can get. For the most part, we find players have more fun. Right? So as much as possible, a big focus for raw data was get players moving, make it an active VR experience, because to us, that really was the dream. That's what we were focusing on, is really what active VR sucks you into that experience.
So, and part of this was just getting, the closer that we could get the world to the player, the better. So enemies are a little bit larger and imposing. They get right up in your face. We spent time with the robot enemies in the game. You really get them up close and personal with you, just so that you can really get a sense of that immersion and being part of the world, as opposed to having them stay far back and do long-ranged kind of interactions. We certainly have some of that,
But we toned that down. That's an excellent point. In particular, I don't know how you have played the game or have noticed, but another example of that, besides enemies shooting at you far away, again, we find the closer we bring the enemies to you, the more in your space they are, the more fun it becomes, the more real it becomes, the more immersive it is. And we do that across the board with having less enemies firing far away. Even if they fire far away, they're constantly moving towards you. But even other things like the drones. We have flying drones in the game, and initially when the coders put those in, they had working just great, but they were really high up, and you were having to fight these battles with these drones really high above you. And I'm like, well, that's great, but it's really not that much fun because they're so far away, right? And it's not as much fun to be looking directly up at them. So what I ended up doing was taking the volume in which they could fly and just bringing it down to the point where the drones will actually buzz the player by their head. And there's a lot of people now who just, we've seen a lot of posts of people breaking their lamps or ceiling fans or various things, in particular when they're playing Saija and using her sword, specifically the drone buzzing by and whacking it out of the air. And they couldn't do that if the drones were really high up. So again, that's another example where the closer we bring the action to the player, just the more immersive it is.
Okay, next slide. So here I also want to talk about, not only are we pursuing active VR and making the player active and all the things that Mike just spoke about, but the social side of VR, we are true believers in. There's been certainly a lot of talk, at least early on, about how VR is isolating and all of this. Well, we don't believe that whatsoever, and in fact, we've found quite the opposite. Co-op play was really central to our approach from the very beginning. You could almost call it a core mechanic of ours. We've always really been into a shared experience. Not only do you get these great up-close immersive experiences on your own, but it's the value of that, the excitement of that is exponentially increased when you can share that with a friend. So co-op has been really important. You'll see that continue in things that Survios does. We even have some great social interactions in our showroom where you can communicate with other players before you actually get into matches. And it's something that we will continue to build around. It's something that really shouldn't be overlooked because with VR especially, the market is so new and growing that if you can bring people together in any way, whether it's co-op or through other types of social interactions, it only helps the entire industry and it helps with word of mouth for your game. For anybody who's done work in the mobile space and the social mobile space, you may be familiar with the K-factor equation and how if you get somebody in your game and they're talking about it and they can share it with friends, that then increases your reach. And we're finding the same type of thing here. So social VR, active VR, both were very important early core tenants for Survios and raw data.
Yeah, definitely, and you can see that in the way people play the game. In particular, like Chris said, we didn't shy away from it early on. We still truly believe social experiences in VR can be greater than any other game or platform that's out there right now. As much as it's really fun, whether you're sitting on the couch with a friend or you're on the internet and talking to them or typing with them, whether it's on the headset or not, there's just something magical about being in VR and when you're playing a game and the person materializes in front of you and he's moving his arms and he's talking to you and you're looking at him and he's looking at you. There's just no other experience like that in other games. So we're firm believers that having that full avatar embodiment is a much more social experience than in any other platform to date.
Great. So what happened next? Around this time, we showed the game off at VRLA and GDC last year, got tremendous feedback, and realized that we really had a strong core game to build upon. but we also realized that we needed something more than what was just a set of core mechanics, right? As great as they were, we needed more than what could be labeled sort of a demo experience. We wanted something that really did embrace the AAA premium game sort of moniker that we could go with premium pricing on and all these things, and something that would provide a full gameplay loop for the players. So this is the time when the metagame sort of made its way into the game. Mike did a great job with several elements, as did James, putting in a strong narrative. You got a sense of that in the trailer. Can't understate how important that is to bringing the world to life. Also introducing things like a nexus and tower defense, if you want to talk any about that.
Other mechanics. I think that's a good point too, is there are fantastic other VR experiences out there. I mean, we download them and play them all just like everybody else and have a great time with them. But a lot of the experiences, while they're a lot of fun, they're short experiences, right? They'll last a good, 15, 20 minutes, maybe an hour. And we knew with raw data that wasn't enough for us, right? We didn't want people just playing once, twice, or for 2 hours. We wanted them to get a full 8, 10 plus. I mean, hell, we have some people that have 50 plus hours on raw data. It's incredible. But that was a big focus for us, is to make sure we had an experience that players could keep coming back to in VR. And that every time we release new content, there's always a reason for them to keep coming back, to try it out, try something new, and experience something, a lot of replay value that you don't typically get in a lot of the other experiences right now. So moving on to Locomotion, that was another big thing we had to figure out from the beginning. So for those of you who have played raw data, or for those of you who haven't, we have a slide here showing you the concept of what we called teleshifting. So we knew from the beginning, actually, the very first demo the team had of raw data, characters were stationary. Not that they couldn't move, but you had your platform in the center, and you had your both characters are co-op, but you were kind of stuck to wherever you could physically walk to. And that was a really fun starting experience, a great prototype. We're really focusing on the gameplay, the guns, the shooting, the melee, and all that. We just felt it was too limiting. It was just we knew from the beginning this is just too limiting. We wanted players to explore the environment. We have these amazing artists, right, who are making all these fantastic props and models and everything in these incredible environments. And you were restricted, you couldn't see them. You just wanted to, and it also really hampered gameplay. I mean, the fact that, an enemy would back up, or you want to run to him rather than wait for him to come to you. So we knew from the beginning we really needed to have Locomotion as part of that. We couldn't accept stationary we didn't see a full game coming out of just stationary. So that's when we focused on the solution for teleshifting. The reason why we went this route for raw data, at least our first product released, is that we wanted to ensure there was no nausea. That was a big belief from the beginning. We make experiences that do not make people sick in any capacity. Everyone should be able to enjoy it and have an amazing time. So this is where we're working with a lot of the coders, working with Alex in particular, as our tech lead on the project, really hammering down how we make this teleshifting experience where, one, it doesn't make players sick, two, it's very easy to use, and then three, it allows you to feel like you're in the environment. Too many of the earlier VR experiences we had played with the teleporting experiences, it felt like you were kind of blinking in and out of existence. And we wanted to make it feel like you were actually moving from one location to another. So all of those reasons, we spent a lot of time focusing on this feature. And then moving on to the next big pillar. So this is actually a lot of the conversations to define what raw data was from the beginning. So going back to Bullet Time Apex, the early prototype the team had, they solved great mechanics for how to interact with things, how to use weapons, how to be in the VR space, solve so many problems. But the early prototypes we had when we were playing, it's like, well, this is fun. I can use a shotgun, I can use a bow, I can use a pistol, but I could go do that in real life, right? I can go do a shooting range or experience of those things. I can't fight robots in real life. That's unfortunate. Maybe in the future. But that was the big thing for myself joining the team early on, is making sure, well, this is cool, but I want more, right? I'm in VR to do something that I just can't experience in real life, that promise of VR, right? And to me, for raw data, that means being that hero, being that badass character. We all have our favorite heroes or superheroes, whether it's the Avengers or someone from a sci-fi movie or Aliens or any of these things. And we wanted you to live that experience, right? Like you are in the movie, you're in your favorite book, you're in your favorite TV show. So that was a huge focus for us at the beginning, is to adding powers, adding abilities, amping it up, taking this above and beyond just the basic weapons, which are already very fun.
So that gave us an incredibly rich, full game with which to work on. And in order to get there, to accomplish all of these things, we really had to step back while the majority of the team was off at GDC, showing off the game, and the production team stayed back and really dug through the scope of the game. We did that with the leads as well. And we took the time, we took a couple of weeks to really hone down what the scope and the schedule was, with the goal of, as soon as the team was back from GDC and had settled back in, that we had an entire roadmap that would get us to early access and would really encompass all of these core mechanics and the metagame features in a way that we could get there. So that was pretty important for us. Up until this point, raw data had been in production for about 8 months or so, I would say. We were about a year altogether before we went into early access. So this was just good in getting the team on the same page. The takeaway here is that we used GDC, the time that most of the team was away, as an opportunity to hunker down and do some of the more production wonky stuff and build out the schedule. And that way the team was able to come back and hit the ground running. So being able to find those natural breaks that your team is already focused on something else is a great way to keep the momentum going, where you don't have to sort of sit idle while you're rescoping or figuring out schedules. So we had our schedule, we were on track, we got ready to launch the game into early access, and we then had to decide what would our launch timing be. So sounds like a simple question, the game's ready, you just launch it. Well, we could have done that. We also could have launched it over 4th of July weekend, a long weekend. Seems like that might make sense. People have extra time to play games if they're not with their families. Or we could try to do something else. So one of the things that we really believe in at Survios as well is not only do you look inward, but you can look outward for guidance. So what does that mean? In this case, we reached out to our platform partners and we reached out to hardware partners that we had been working with, and we involved them in the conversation around launch timing. And why would you do that, you may ask? Well, it was really helpful for us because we were advised that our existing plans would have had us come out during the middle of the Steam summer sale. And if we were to do that, there's no way that we could have received any sort of support from the Steam store around launch. Not that there was any guarantee that we would get support if we launched later, but there was definitely a guarantee we would get nothing if we launched during the summer sale. So we would have walked right into a situation where we just would have shot ourselves in the foot in the sense of partners being able to help promote for us. So I really recommend, whenever you're looking to launch, not only look inwardly, but talk to your partners, your platform partners in particular, and develop that relationship. Don't just speak with them when you're ready to launch. We tend to visit with our partners at least once a quarter, if not more, get some face time. No one ever wants to see you only when you're asking for something. So I probably belabored that point.
Yeah, but yeah. I think that's the important thing to acknowledge, that VR in particular right now, it's not as mainstream as giant console games with enormous budgets that are going to be at Walmart and Target, and to not fight that, to just embrace it and accept it as a much more of an indie atmosphere and mindset. So having those relationships with your partners, whether it's on Steam or the Oculus Store or PlayStation, whatever approach that you're going, it's very important to acknowledge how your users are going to find you, and making sure that there's a time window where your partners can help them find you, right? Because it's very much an explorative-driven system at this point.
Well said, well said. So now that we had our launch timing, we had to figure out what price should we sell the game at. And again, we had several options here. We could we looked around at what was happening in the market. We could price at the same sort of range that most of the other games were priced at. We could go for something lower, we could go for something higher. We had a lot of debate and discussion internally. We also enlisted the aid of our partners and decided in the end to pursue a premium pricing model, because not only did we really believe in the product, that we had a premium level product. We saw some of the supply and demand that was playing out in the marketplace, that there was a vacuum for the premium content pricing. But if you looked at the demographics of the users, they tended to be on the higher end, people that could afford premium pricing for the right product. And you can never raise your price once you've set it. It's just a simple pricing dynamic, but you can always come down, you can do sales. So it gave us room to work in case the market did not respond the way that we thought it would. Fortunately, it did, and not only did it respond as we thought, it responded much better than we could have hoped for.
And I think it's also just a choice internally we made, is we wanted to make a premium product, right? It's us, we could have made smaller bite-sized products, right? But we specifically were acknowledging we wanted to make a full game for our users, right? Something that they would cherish. And clearly the market wants this content. They want premium content.
So you want to talk quickly about updates?
Yeah, so just to talk a little bit about this, I know we're running short on time here. So starting at the beginning, we made the conscious choice as a team. We wanted to do early access. A lot of this is because we just didn't know how the community was going to respond, just to be totally honest, right? Brand new hardware, brand new systems for everybody. We had to figure that out. So we released early, and then we started getting feedback right away from the community, which is fantastic. And let me tell you, the team bent over backwards to respond to the community as fast as it possibly could, not just with hot fixes for bugs, but for additional features, little tweaks here and there. Our coders, our artists, our designers all stayed really late and worked their butts off. And then we quickly realized we were burning the team out, responding too rapidly to consumers. And while we were making a few people here and there really happy, it was hurting the longevity of the product. And we knew we wanted to, again, premium content, premium product. So we had to space that out. Instead of going from releasing every 2 weeks to at some point releasing once a month, to eventually we realized we wanted to put a bulk of the content together and release every 3 months. Because no matter how we did it, every time you release, there's a price you have to pay, internal production price, right? Fixing bugs, stabilizing, optimizing. So the further we could space that out, the more efficient the team became. And honestly, the bigger bang of content releases is actually better for the consumers, we find at the end of the day. They're far more interested when you release a whole bunch of content at once, rather than just streaming it out.
So quarterly updates, they've worked great for us. And in addition, community. The community has been fantastic for raw data. And part of that is, or at least we can't take credit for a great community, they're awesome people. But from very early on, it was important that we engage with our community. So some of the decisions that we made from the beginning, and this isn't lip service, we really bought into this early, we resourced up properly for it, have community managers right out of the get-go. One of the key decisions we made, I think, that helped us is we resisted the urge to sort of build our own set of forums and try to drive people to a new place. We went to where the fans already were, and we actually tailored that down just to 2 channels. We focused on driving people to our Steam page and the forums that are there, and we also engaged on Reddit, because that's where the 2 most active communities were. It makes no sense to try to move people off of that, and that proved to be a big, big success for us.
Yep.
All right.
Another thing to talk about coming up for raw data, for those of you who haven't heard already, we have a new content release coming out in March. Very excited about that. We're going to have a new mission. Our 2 characters, Sayaja and Boss, are going to have a whole bunch of slew of new powers, which we're very excited about because they weren't previously finished. But probably one of the bigger things is we are not just supporting the Rift completely, we are actually fully cross-platform play compatible. So now all users, whatever platform they're on, of those 2 platforms, they'll be able to go online, play co-op with their friends. It doesn't matter what system they're on, the community is just going to grow larger and larger as these, it's one community, not 2 separate ones.
Yep, again, the social aspects of VR, we want to try to bring all the VR players together into the same ecosystem so that you don't have to worry about trying to find friends to play with, and you can really build things up, get the word of mouth. And that's pretty much it. So I think we have a couple of minutes to take some questions afterwards. I know Mike and I will be out in the little reception lounge area outside to take further questions.
Yep, and we also have our booth, for you those unaware, it's number 944? 944. So Wednesday through Friday, we'll have our booth. Please swing by, we'll be there. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Yes, on raw data, and we also are showing a sneak peek at our another upcoming game. So.
All right, that's
Great.
it.
Thank you. Good job, Mike. Thank you.
I think we literally have 1 minute, so.
Yeah, we can stretch.
Hello?
Hi.
Quick question. Are you going to have like a least common denominator play space, or are you going to adapt to the different?
No, so basically on either platforms you can play full 360, but we made specific developments for those users who only have 2 cameras if they're on the Rift system. So we built new tech to support that. So it won't matter which one you're using.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest challenge you had in terms of limiting the player from trying to physically move around the room versus actually teleporting? And before you answer the question, I have to tell you, my college-age daughter who came home, her comment and her boyfriend's comment playing it was, "Holy shit, science has gone way too far. This is ridiculous."
Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's thanks to our brilliant team. Our coders and designers and artists have just done a phenomenal job on the product. So yes, players walking into the environment, using the environment was a big debate internally. Initially we had some systems that were preventing the player from physically putting their arms into things or physically walking into a wall that would stop them. We had to reverse course and go a different direction than that because we found that it would cause nausea for some people, stopping at a wall. So that, again, no nausea policy. We're not going to let players get sick. So instead, what we ended up doing is we realized once players, if they stick their head in the wall or something, we just turn the screen red. We start damaging them after a few seconds. Once they realize, oh, and we disable their buttons. So they realize, oh, I can't actually walk in a wall, nothing works. They just stop doing it almost immediately. They don't do it more than once.
I wanted to know what are some specific things you did to drive community engagement to Steam and in Reddit that really worked?
So we've done a number of things. We've done some great cross promotions with other VR titles. And we're going to look for Roger right there. What was the cross? We did the cross promotions with.
Yeah, it's called Free Key Friday, and we've done really fun things with Rec Room,
Yeah.
with an experiment.
Okay, cool.
So I would say, talk to Roger, who's up front here, and he's part of our marketing team. They're a fantastic group. He'll be happy to help you with that.
But the Free Key Fridays have been really, really good, where we actually have skinned raw data avatars in Rec Room. We've done some other things and we'll give away free keys to the game. Constantly, our marketing team is online, calling out either raw data players or different events that are happening. Just a constant. It's social media marketing basically. So just a constant flow of engagement with the fans. And on Reddit, one of our engineers internally is just like a super Reddit fanatic, and he's just on there all the time. As you know, with Reddit, you need authenticity to really connect with that audience, and he already had a voice, so he was able to really be our point person there. Yep.
So raw data was pretty successful in 2016 because it kind of stood out quality-wise among the other experiences out there. What do you think an VR experience or a VR game has to do in 2017 to stand out now?
I would say, again, going back to what we said before, it's premium content. There are so many fantastic experiences out there, but some of them can be, sometimes derivative or, too similar to other stuff. Players love VR, the VR community. They're super excited, they're super enthusiastic. We see it all the time. If you make something great, they're gonna flock to it, is at least our observations, right? So players really want high quality products. And again, it's also going back to one of the other points before. One of the pillars of raw data was be that superhero, be that badass, right? Do something, have all these powers and abilities that you can't do in real life. So I would encourage other developers out there, besides making premium content, give users an experience that they can't have in real life. Do something that they can only do when they're in VR. And I think the players are there and they're just waiting for that content.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's it.
Great, thanks everybody.
Thank you.